everyone, and welcome to our third History Day Insider Tips webinar. My name is Vinia Boland, and I'm the State Coordinator for the National History Day in Iowa program. And I'm going to be leading our chat tonight regarding citing sources and creating our annotated bibliographies. If you have any questions for me during the webinar or afterwards that you don't want shown publicly, please feel free to email me at my email right there on the screen, or feel free to give me a call. I'm in the office Monday through Fridays, 9 a.m. to 4:30, and I'd be happy to chat with you about anything you need help on. So today we are going to be talking about these four things. We're going to talk about citing your sources for your History Day project. We're going to talk about the two style guides, MLA and Chicago. I got a couple emails about the style guides, and yes, MLA and Chicago style are both approved for National History Day. So we're going to talk about both today. We're also going to talk about how to organize your resources, how to get those citations organized to then put into your annotated bibliography. And then we're going to talk about the bibliography itself. There will also be a handout accessible to you. If you're interested in downloading this, handing it out to your students, or just using a copy for yourself, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to send you both the process paper and the annotated bibliography handout. And make sure to ask a lot of questions. So as we're going through this webinar, as you're watching it at home or in the classroom, if you have any questions for me or would like some assistance on putting together either a citation or your annotated bib, please get a hold of me. All right, so first off, let's talk about why it's important to cite our sources. Why are we even going over this? A National History Day student, you're required to cite all sources in your project. It's extremely important because you want to be a responsible scholar and give credit to other researchers. We want to avoid plagiarism by quoting words and ideas created by other authors. And we want to allow your reader, or if you're at a contest, the judges, to track down your sources that you used in your project. So at all points through History Day, all the information that you're pulling from another author, we want to make sure that we're giving them credit. It's also a National History Day rule. So Rule 19 in your rule book says you must acknowledge in your annotated bibliography all sources used in your entry. So whether that's photos, whether it's an interview, whether you went to the library and got newspaper clippings, whether you had a private interview with a historical individual that gave you some great quotes, we want to make sure all of those resources are cited. Failure to credit sources is considered plagiarism and will result in a disqualification. So any teachers, parents, or students listening here, if you have any questions for me about the term of disqualification, what three sections that we consider to be disqualification elements, please get a hold of me if you have any questions about that. It is also outlined in the History Day rule book, so make sure to download a PDF copy of that rule book. Okay, so what should I cite? So we've been doing some research, you've got a couple sources down, and now you're trying to figure out what should I exactly cite. So there's four different areas I want you to look at. Direct quotes. If it's speeches, direct quote from any speeches such as Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, any lectures that your historical individual attended or presented in, or a discussion that was recorded. So whether you're having a private interview, a private discussion with someone, or maybe you're listening to a recording of a previous interview, we're going to want to write those as citations. We're going to want to develop citations for those individuals. Paraphrasing or summarizing. If you want to use someone else's idea to help you make your point or support your own ideas, in this case, it would be considered translating the idea. So even if you're paraphrasing someone else's words, you need to make sure that you're citing where you got that idea from. Information that's not common knowledge, but so certain items that might be unfamiliar to someone else, but maybe common knowledge to you, you want to make sure that you're still citing that information. So for example, statistical information. It may be familiar to you or other researchers who are familiar in your topic, but it still requires confirmation. You're still using those those numbers in your project that you pulled from another source. So for example, graphs, charts, or a timeline created by someone else that's on your exhibit board or on your project or in your research, you're going to want to give credit to. And we want to make sure you're citing all sources that you use, so not just books and articles or websites. Any photos, any newspaper clippings, any interviews, any articles or archives you went to, you want to make sure that every single resource you're using to help support your topic is being cited. All right, so let's talk about the two style guides with History Day that we can use. So many individuals in the National History Day in Iowa program use MLA, or what's referred to the Modern Language Association. There's also another form called Chicago Manual of Style, or better known as Chicago Style. So before we go into these two different styles, I want everyone to know both styles are used to create papers for the subject of humanities, and both are approved by National History Day. So when we use the phrase humanities, we mean cultural studies, ethnic or gender studies, liberal arts, general studies, history subjects, political science, public administration, religious studies. All of these are considered under humanities. So our History Day projects would be under humanities, and we could use both or MLA or Chicago. MLA style. MLA style is typically used in more English subjects, and it uses in-text citations. Chicago style uses more footnotes, where the caption is placed at the bottom of the page, and endnotes, where the citations are placed at the end of the paper or on a separate page. So I just want to clarify for in-text citations, they should be brief and clear as possible. So their purpose is to discreetly guide readers to the corresponding entry listed in your annotated bibliography. So generally this citation, the in-text citation includes the author's last name and the page number of the information used. For Chicago style, the footnotes, where the citation is placed at the bottom of the page, and endnotes, where the citations are placed at the end of the paper or on a separate page. So typically we see the Chicago style used more heavily in the paper category, but like I've said before, both style guides are welcome on any project of National History Day. Both are approved for competition. So we're going to talk about how to get started citing. So you have a resource and you're trying to figure out, how do I go about actually citing it? So first you want to determine which style guide are you going to use, MLA or Chicago? And make sure whichever one you use, you're using it throughout your project. So if you're going to cite a resource in MLA, you need to make sure you're citing everything in your project in MLA format. You want to identify the source. So what are we handling here? Is it a book? Is it a quote? Is it an article? Is it a government document? You got to figure out what the source is first. And then I would highly suggest going to either one of these style guides. I really enjoy using Purdue OWL. Their writing labs are really helpful in trying to figure out how to cite things. I myself have been citing resources for years, but I still go back to these guides every time I write a paper, writing exhibit labels, any research I do, I like to go back to Purdue OWL. So make sure to download those style guides and take a peek at the differences between MLA and Chicago style and see which one works best for your project. So when we're working with MLA format, the core elements you need for an MLA 8th edition citation, that's the most updated form. First, you need to know your author. So begin the entry with the author's last name, followed by a comma and the rest of the name. So for example, it would be Boland, comma, Vania. That's my last name, comma, first name. Title of the source. The title of the source should be followed by the author's name. Depending upon the type of source, it should be listed in italics or quotation marks. So if you have a book, the title of the book should be in italics. When you're working with a website or a web page, the name of the parent website, which in LA, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, or a container. So if it's a grouping of on a parent website, it should be followed in italics. The title of a container. Now I know that the title of the container is new to some of us, but unlike earlier versions of MLA, this 8th edition refers to containers, which are the larger holes in which a source is located. So for example, if you want to cite a poem that is listed in a collection of poems, the individual poem is the source, while the larger collection is the container. The title of the container is usually italicized and followed by a comma, since the information that follows next describes the container. So also if you're going to a library and archives and you're looking at newspaper clippings that are a part of a larger clipping file, you would follow the same procedure for listing that as a container. That clipping file in the archives is considered a container, even though you're only viewing a handful of newspaper clippings from that file. So version. If a source is listed as an edited or version of a work included in the citation. Number. If a source is a part of a numbered sequence, such as a multi-volume book or journal with both volume and issue numbers, those numbers must be listed in your citation. The publisher produces or distributes the source to the public. If there is more than one publisher and they are all relevant to your research, list them in your citation. Publication date. We want to make sure that the same source may have been published on more than one date, such as the online version or the original source. However, if you are discussing, for example, the historical context in which the source was first published, you should cite the full date. So you want to make sure that you have both the original publication date and then the published date of the section you are reviewing. Location. So you should be as specific as possible in identifying a work's location. An essay in a book or an article in a journal should include page numbers. The location of an online work should include the URL. And I've had some questions about this too. I would encourage students to still add the date of when you accessed it. And I also want to do a shout out to Purdue University. We were able to find this information on their fabulous website. So please make sure to take the time to visit Purdue University's online writing lab. Chicago style format. So the common elements for citing in Chicago style: author names. Author names in the bibliography, placing the last name first and separating the last name with the first name with a comma. So for example, again, Boland, comma, Vania. Titles. Titles of a book and journals are italicized. Titles of articles, chapters, poems, etc. are placed in quotation marks. Publication information. The year of publication is listed after the publisher or the journal name. And punctuation. In all bibliographies, all major elements are separated by periods. So once again, I highly recommend, no matter what kind of source you're planning to cite, take a look at Purdue University's online writing lab. They have a lot of great examples. They can walk you through step by step on what each source needs to be cited. We also want to talk about how to organize your sources. So you've got all these sources in front of you. You're looking at the different elements that you need to cite it. Now, here is some recommendation on how to organize this citation, and then later on, just drop and paste into your annotated bibliography. So right here, I've taken a snapshot of what's called a source tracker. So if I have any teachers listening as well, you can download this into an Excel spreadsheet and share with your students. But what I highly recommend students, if you're working especially in a group, to share an Excel spreadsheet through Google Docs just like this one. We see on the left-hand side that we have a source. So we're going to look at what is the title of the source, what kind of source we have. Do we have any quotes or memorable pieces of information that we're recording from this source? We also recommend putting in your own words 3 to 5 words. So this can either help with your thesis statement, or it can help later on write that annotated bibliography. Or what are you going to pull from this source that will later be added to your project? Keywords, we want to focus on the short-term, long-term impact. Keywords that can support your argument or showcase the impact your topic had. So this may even help you with writing that thesis statement, defending your argument or the claim you have made in your project. And the type of source, we want to figure out what kind of source is this? What are we looking at here? So when we go to cite the source here in the far left column, you will take a look at those style guides and go right ahead and put your citation right there in this Excel spreadsheet. So when it comes time to build your annotated bibliography, you can take all this beautiful information and create your bibliography in a very seamless and beautiful way. Now, if you have any questions about citing a source, please feel free to send me an email. While you're working on your project, if you'd like someone to edit your citations, please feel free to sign up for an NHD and Iowa mentor, or I'm happy to take a look at them as well. So before we dive into building the annotated bibliography, I want to take a step back and make sure everyone has a clear indication of the difference between primary and secondary sources. So 60% of your History Day project is accurate and a healthy amount of primary and secondary resources to show that you did an in-depth analysis. So a primary resource provides a first-hand account about a person or an event. It is written or produced at the time of the event. So we have some examples here. We have letters, speeches, diaries. Those are really powerful primary resources. Newspaper articles from that time period. So we want to look at newspapers that are being published during the time of the event. Documents, photographs, and artifacts. Those are all great primary resources, first-hand accounts. Secondary resource. Sourced by an author who was not an eyewitness or a participant in the historical event or period. So some examples for this: school textbooks. Textbooks are something that everyone has access to right in your own classroom. If you don't have one, please ask your teacher for one. Biographies or encyclopedias. As you're exploring your topic, you might find other papers written by other historians about your topic. Take a look at their works cited or their annotated bibliographies and see if you can find some resources that you could explore. It applies to descriptive articles or information found on the internet. So you've probably heard me talk about before, certain sites on the internet can be a little dangerous. I think students have a hard time depicting what information on the website is considered primary or secondary. And I just want to say now, if you have information from a Wikipedia site, that is certainly a secondary source. I would recommend not even having Wikipedia sites on your annotated bibliography. This can cause some concern with judges, and we want to make sure that the information you're using is accurate. So with Wikipedia, that's a great site to go and kind of explore your topic, get some great context as to what you're going to be researching, but I would not recommend using it as a resource to add into your project. The annotated bibliography. So what sources were used in the creation of your project? That's what the annotated bibliography talks about. Creating an annotated bibliography lets your reader know what sources you used in the creation of your project. First, an annotated bibliography tells the reader how many sources you used and the quality and the range of sources used in your research. It provides evidence of the many hours that you spent doing research in libraries, archives, your classroom, and on the internet. Second, the annotation informs the reader of how you used your source and why they were valuable to understanding your topic. An annotated bibliography is crucial to the NHD process because it shows judges the scope and depth of your research. So this is what really defends the 60% of your project. These are the first things that I tell judges to look for when they're examining a project. Take that annotated bibliography and see the research that the student did. So the format, I want to go over a couple pieces of the format to when you go and build your annotated bibliography. These are also set by the National History Day office. So number one, your list should be titled Annotated Bibliography. I've seen a lot of just bibliography or works cited. Make sure that it's labeled Annotated Bibliography. Divide your annotated bibliography into two sections. So you're going to divide your resources into primary and secondary. So if you have questions on what's considered a primary or secondary after you cite it, please let us know, or we can have a mentor review it for you. But I highly recommend that you utilize teachers in your room to help you through the editing process. But really, when you're building your annotated bibliography, you should build this bibliography as you conduct the research. Simply put, if you wait until the end of your project, this task will be messy, confusing, and really complicated. It's easy to forget sources or mix one up with another. This is where you can get into a lot of easy mistakes. So please use that source tracker and organize that from the very beginning. Number three, create an annotation to support that citation. Give the reader a hint about what he or she should find in this source. So, three components of writing a good annotation. It identifies what type of source this is. So is it a song, a poem, a book, website, journal article, diary entry? Explain what it is to the judge. How was the source used? And how did the source help you understand your topic and create your project? So each one of your citations, when you go to write that annotation, which is right underneath the citation, be able to answer those three questions for your judge. So I also want to give you a couple tips for the annotated bibliography. We got three right here. So number one, if you're needing more assistance in working on your bibliography, make sure to sign up for Noodle Tools. NHD teachers are eligible to sign up for a complimentary access to Noodle Tools for a single NHD season. So students, if you're interested in using Noodle Tools, please get a hold of me or chat with your teachers. We'd be happy to get you set up. The Noodle Tool program actually walks you through how to organize and put together a bibliography. It's a fantastic site. So if you're needing extra assistance or more guidance, please feel free to register with Noodle Tools. And that's the site right there on the screen. Review with your teacher. Be proactive. Set up 2 meetings with your teacher. Go over with them on the different site sources that you have and what's primary, what's secondary, how should I organize this? Do you see any editing mistakes? Please make sure to have your teacher review this before you go to contest. That's really important. And start this annotated bibliography as we speak. Right after you get off this webinar, go jump on Google Docs and start building it. You don't want to wait till the last minute. It can become really stressful for you. If you have any questions about the annotated bibliography, I would be happy to send some examples or meet with any students who are interested in getting more help. We know that this can be a very daunting task, but we can make it very easy for you. I'd be happy to edit pieces. I'm sure your teachers or some of our mentors would as well. But if you're looking for more help, make sure to sign up for a National History Day mentor. That's the link right there. We're happy to help with research assistance, editing projects, or your thesis writing, or maybe you just need some guidance on your topic. We'd be happy to pair you with a History Day alumni. MLA formatting style guides and Chicago style study guides. Please make sure to go to Purdue OWL just to check out their writing lab. Different pieces that they have online are just fantastic. They have great different examples for you, and I'm sure if you reached out, they'd be happy to help you as well. I also wanted to pinpoint EasyBib. I know schools have used this in the past. We really want students to learn how to cite their sources on their own, but EasyBib does require for you to find out what kind of source it is, and it asks you for certain materials in order to cite the source for you. So don't think that EasyBib's just going to do all the work for you. You got to be able to find some of the information on your own in order to have EasyBib help you with the citation. And Noodle Tools that we just talked about. If anyone has questions about Noodle Tools, please get a hold of me. Also, be friends with your English and social studies teacher. They'd be happy to review or edit any part of your project. Upcoming webinars that we have, so future insider tips. The next one is January 9th. We're going to be talking to some History Day mentors about the categories that they competed in at district, state, and national level. So if you're wanting to learn more about the 5 categories, please make sure to sign up on January 9th. And thank you so much, everyone, for participating and reviewing this webinar. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about citing a source or building that annotated bibliography.